When someone asks about your childhood and you suddenly freeze like the answer isn't quite there, not because it was terrible and not because nothing happened, but because somewhere between the ages of 7 and 17 you skipped about 15 chapters of your life, and that gap is exactly what we're talking about today. There's something that happens when childhood ends before it's supposed to, and it's not always some dramatic, movie-worthy moment. Sometimes it's quiet, almost invisible. It looks like making dinner for your siblings at 9 years old while your parent works a double shift, or becoming the translator between your parents during their arguments, or learning to read the room long before you ever learned to read chapter books. And here's what doesn't get talked about enough. The version of you that had to grow up too fast doesn't disappear. It stays with you and continues to shape the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you make decisions even now. Imagine a child, maybe 8 years old, who suddenly becomes the most responsible person in their household, not because they chose to, but because they had to. And in that moment, something shifts. Psychologists call this parentification, when a child takes on roles and responsibilities that were never meant for them. But the clinical term doesn't fully capture what it feels like. It doesn't capture the weight of being small and carrying something so much bigger than you. Research by Dr. Lisa M. Hooper shows that children in these situations often appear exceptionally mature. But what looks like maturity is not actually maturity. It's adaptation. It's survival. It's a child's nervous system learning to live in constant crisis mode as its default setting. And that setting doesn't just disappear with time. What felt normal to you was often someone else's emergency. And growing up like this teaches you skills that seem impressive on the surface. You become incredibly good at reading people, sensing shifts in mood the moment someone walks into a room, anticipating needs before they're even spoken, solving problems automatically because not solving them was never really an option. But those same abilities come with a hidden cost, one you often don't recognize until years later, because children who grow up too fast tend to struggle not with big life challenges, but with the smallest, simplest things. You can handle pressure, responsibility, and chaos better than most, but asking for help feels unnatural. Resting feels like guilt, and being carefree feels almost unsafe, because you learned early that your needs come second, and that stability depends on how well you can hold everything together. You didn't just learn this as a lesson. You built your entire internal operating system around it, and that system continues to run quietly in the background of your adult life. This is why you often become the person everyone relies on, the dependable one who handles everything without complaint, the one people turn to in a crisis, and why you may find yourself drawn to people who need fixing, not because you have a savior complex, but because being needed feels like love. It's the only kind of love that felt familiar to you growing up. Relationships become complicated because intimacy feels exposing, vulnerability feels risky, and even when you're safe, even when someone genuinely cares about you, there's a part of you that refuses to let your guard down. You might find yourself attracted to emotionally unavailable partners, and it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because unavailability feels familiar. It feels like home, because home was a place where you gave endlessly and rarely received anything in return. So when someone offers you consistent love and presence, it can feel uncomfortable, almost suspicious, like you're just waiting for it to disappear. There's also a deep need for control, not in a toxic way, but in a survival-driven way, because unpredictability once meant chaos, meant everything falling apart, so now you plan everything, you overthink everything, you run through countless scenarios before making even the smallest decision, and while others might label you as anxious or perfectionistic, what they're really seeing is a child who learned that letting their guard down had consequences, and the exhaustion that comes with this is real. It's a deep, persistent fatigue that sleep alone doesn't fix, because your nervous system has been running on overdrive since childhood and never truly learned what safety or rest feels like. Rest once felt dangerous, like something might go wrong the moment you stopped paying attention, and that belief doesn't just disappear overnight. Another thing that often happens is a complicated relationship with success. You achieve things, meaningful things, impressive things, but it never quite feels like enough. There's always a voice pushing you to do more, be better, go faster, because your sense of worth became tied to your usefulness a long time ago. And the difficult truth is that the world rewards this pattern. Society values people who are productive, independent, low maintenance, and reliable, but it rarely asks what it costs them to become that way. We also become fluent in something most people never consciously learn, the language of emotional labor. You can manage tension in a room like a conductor guiding an orchestra. You can diffuse conflict before it even begins. You can make everyone else feel comfortable while quietly struggling inside. And over time, this becomes so automatic that you don't even notice you're doing it anymore. But unlike breathing, which sustains you, this slowly drains you, leaving you feeling empty in ways that are hard to explain. You can be surrounded by people, friends, family, co-workers, and still feel completely alone. Not lonely in the obvious sense, but unseen, like no one truly understands how much effort it takes to keep everything running smoothly. And asking for recognition feels uncomfortable, almost like admitting failure. So the question becomes, what do you do with all of this? How do you begin to heal from something that doesn't look like traditional trauma, something that wasn't one defining moment, but a collection of thousands of small experiences that shaped you over time? The first step is to allow yourself to grieve, because what you lost was real. You lost a version of childhood where you could have been messy, dependent, carefree, and still loved. And acknowledging that loss doesn't make you ungrateful, it makes you honest. The second step is learning that being needed is not the same as being valued, that your worth is not defined by how much you do for others or how well you manage their emotions. You're not a human doing, you're a human being, and simply being is enough. You're allowed to rest, you're allowed to not have all the answers, you're allowed to fall apart sometimes and to receive care without having to earn it first. And perhaps most importantly, you are allowed to be a beginner at being taken care of, because that's something you were never taught, no matter how old you are now. Healing this takes time, and it requires patience with yourself, because the child who grew up too fast wasn't weak. They were incredibly strong, resourceful and resilient. They did what they had to do to survive. But they don't have to carry everything anymore. They don't have to run the show forever. It's safe now to let someone else hold the weight. It's safe to experience lightness, to reconnect with a sense of play, to feel young at heart even if you're discovering it later in life. You've been holding everything together for so long, gripping so tightly just to keep things from falling apart. So maybe the real question is this: what would it feel like to finally let go? If this resonated with you, consider subscribing. And if you want to support more deep, meaningful content like this, you can join the channel as a member. I truly appreciate your support.